voice of the Detroit Lions, Fox 2 sports director, kind enough to join us here on what's today, Tuesday?
It is.
We used to do Tuesdays with
That's
Dan.
right.
Look at that. Every Tuesday during football season at this hour, we would check in with our good friend Dan Miller. And coincidentally enough, the big man is here right now. Hi, Dan.
Hey, Dan.
What do you say, guys? What's happening?
What's going on, Dan?
Not a whole lot, man. You know, we sit here, we talk about Lions every single day. And and we go through these mock drafts. We go through this offseason. You know what? It's so fun. It is so fun for us, I think, to talk about a football team that has high hopes. How would you, Dan, as you sit back and watch this offseason unfold, watch free agency unfold, how would you characterize what Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell have done with this team through free agency?
I think they had a vision of how they wanted to attack this thing. I think they wanted to be fiscally, not go out there and just throw huge dollars at guys. I think they clearly had guys in their sights, like Cam Sutton right off the bat, went in there, got him, and felt like that was a big get. Mosley, bit of a calculated risk coming off an ACL, was somebody that I think they looked at as well and think if he's healthy, he can help. I think CJ was a little bit of I don't want to say a Hail Mary, but I don't necessarily know. Brad Holmes said he didn't know if it was going to work out. He wasn't in their budget at the beginning when it looked like he would get a multi-year deal for big dollars, but he stuck to it. And then when the market kind of left, CJ behind, they were able to get him on a one-year contract. So I think they had an idea, Ryan, that they were going to be more aggressive this year than they have been in past years in terms of spending money and going outside the organization. But at the same time, I think they did some important things in re-signing Kaminsky and re-signing Buggs, and re-signing Anzalone, and bringing back some of their own guys that they felt like were important pieces that you can't just keep turning things over. There's got to be some continuity as well.
So many people looked at that defensive backfield and said, the Lions have to get help there. They seem to target that area of their defense. But again, you mentioned Buggs and Kaminsky. I think those two might not have gotten the Lions on SportsCenter, but those two are very important signings. What do you think about those guys? And do you see a big need on this team right now? Is there a glaring hole anywhere on this football team where a couple of weeks there might have been? Do you see one now?
Well, I think as far as Buggs and Kaminsky goes, look, you need numbers up front. And you couldn't just let guys like that were a part of your success last year walk away because you'd have to replace them. And then you're just going out and looking for somebody that you're not sure what you're going to get from in your system and bring them in. They know what they're going to get from these guys. And look, I'm excited about Kaminsky. Now, I had an opportunity to talk to him a couple times last year, and he just felt like for the first time in his career, he was being used correctly. Remember, everything he did last year, he did with a club on his hand. So it'll be nice to see him play without that. And Buggs is a leader on this team. He's a voice in that locker room on this team. And I think they wanted to make sure that they got him back because he's important to their culture. So I think there's importance on the field and off when it comes to those guys. Look, glaring need, I still think there's needs. I still think backup quarterback is a big question. If you think of yourself as a division winner, playoff contender, NFC contender, you better be ready in case Jared Goff can't play. And right now, I don't think they are. So I think that's still something that needs to be addressed. I think the offensive line, with Big V now having a chance to come back, apparently. I think with Glasgow coming back, I think the offensive line feels like it's in pretty good shape. I still think they could draft there for the future, knowing that Jonah's going to be a free agent after this season. But I don't see glaring needs. Here's the thing that I think they did coming out of free agency. I think they can look up at the wall right now and see their depth chart and say, we can play a game tomorrow. We know that we're good enough at each position to go play a game tomorrow. Doesn't mean you're finished, but it also doesn't mean that there's anything that you go into the draft with desperation, having to fill a hole that you have to force something. I think they can follow their board, add talent, and I think they've given themselves some option at different places they can go. I still think interior pass pressure from defensive tackle would be something nice to add. But for the most part, I think the work that they've done has put them in a good position.
Dan, it's Maz. Thanks for joining us. Let's get to the draft. Let's pick 6 and picks 18. we've seen many mock drafts. Todd McShay came out with his today. Tyree Wilson is picking up steam. You hear everything, 4 quarterbacks in the top 4 picks. What do you, Dan Miller, think they're doing at 6 and at 18? Are they picking? Are they trading?
I think they'd be open to either. I think it depends. Look, so much at 6 depends on who goes in the top 5. Are 4 quarterbacks going to go? If 4 quarterbacks go, that leaves either Will Anderson, Carter, or Wilson on the board for them to possibly take, or offensive line or cornerback, as we've seen in so many of these drafts. Look, I don't know. I think part of what I talked about a moment ago, the work that they've done in free agency, has put them in the position where you're seeing mock drafts with cornerbacks, mock drafts with offensive linemen, mock drafts with defensive linemen, because there's so many different directions they could go, and no place that they would necessarily be forced to go because of what their current depth chart looks like. I don't know what their research says on Carter. I don't know how they feel about him. That's a question that other teams are going to have to answer, and I think it's a big part of that process as you get to number 6 is, will he be taken or will he still be sitting there? There's clearly red flags, but we don't have access to the conversations that they're having that would either say, you know what, those red flags mean stop, or we feel better about talking to him, talking to people that know him, and we'd be comfortable with drafting him. I think those are some of the questions that have to be answered. Guys, it feels like defense, but I'm not going to be shocked if an offensive lineman goes there, because it is what this team is kind of built around at this point. And I do have some concerns about Jonah Jackson becoming a free agent and the ability to pay, the guys they have on that offensive line, 2 of whom are already getting paid, and 1 of whom in Panay, who's going to get paid here soon.
Talking to Dan Miller, voice of the Lions, and of course Fox 2 sports director. Dan, you just talked about the offensive line and the identity of the Detroit Lions, and that is why I look at this player in Bijan Robinson, and if he is there at 18, how do you pass on him? And is he even a player that maybe you would identify and trade up to get? Would they take a player like that? I love that kid.
Yes to all of it, because I think they've given themselves the ability with the extra assets that they have in the draft to trade up if they want to trade up. Maybe not just for him, but for somebody else. But look, DeAndre Swift has not proven to be dependable, and that's a problem. And he's going into the last year of his contract. And there are people that feel like this is the best running back coming out in several years. And he's a game-breaking type of back that I think is somebody that they would definitely look at. And I don't know how they rate him against a Banks from Maryland or one of these other cornerbacks that might be sitting there at 18. Because the other thing that I would kind of throw into the mix here, guys, is remember, we can talk about all the work that they've done in their secondary, but they have one cornerback who's not going to be on a 1-year deal going into this season. And that's assuming they don't pick up the 5th-year option on Okudah, which I think most people figure that they won't. And that's Cam Sutton. So if Okudah has a great year, or Mosley has a great year, or Gardner Johnson has a great year, to re-sign them is going to cost $12 to $16 million. To draft a cornerback, if you see one of these guys at 6 or 18 that you think is a starting player in this league and a cornerstone-type defensive player, is going to be much cheaper. So those are things that I think you have to take into consideration as well. Ryan, I'm not going to fall over and be shocked if they draft a running back. And I know there's some people out there that say, oh my gosh, you can't draft a running back in the first round. If this player is who people believe it is, this is a game-changing type of player that I think somebody will grab somewhere in that first round. And it wouldn't shock me if it is them, based on some of the work that they've done at this point, that would allow them to make that move.
Dan, what's going on? Braylon here. Haven't asked a question because I've been tired of asking the same question. I didn't want to ask you another 6 or 8. I didn't want to ask you about Lamar Jackson. So I said, let me think long and hard.
Good night, everybody.
You know what I'm saying? Let's spoil alert.
Welcome to the world
We're
of
going
Moss.
home early today, Braylon.
Hey, that's a good thing. I can go take care of this hay fever. But I want to ask you a question. Obviously, we're going to lose Ben Johnson next year, and then at some point we will lose Aaron Glenn. I mean, that's the nature of having great coordinators. That's the nature of the beast. Dan Campbell's a guy that seems like he recruits from within. Who's on your radar, OC? Who's on your radar, DC, for next year or after next season?
I think that number one, it says something about this organization that we haven't said in a while, is that their coaches are desirable. I mean, we haven't had people really interviewing a lot of Lions assistants. Terrell Austin certainly got some, but we haven't had people that were interviewing Lions assistants over the years. So I think that certainly that puts them in a place that they haven't been before. And I would just say this, in terms of who's on the radar, there's a lot of faith in Dan Campbell based on the staff that he's put together.
Yeah.
And what he's been able to do in terms of hiring coaches. From day one, people thought that the strength of Dan Campbell was the staff that he assembled, and I think that's been borne out. He may be called upon now to come in and change that and have to shake that up and maybe lose one coordinator, maybe lose two coordinators. But I think he's confident. Why did the tight end coach go right in my head? Who's now the passing game head coach?
Steve Hyden.
No, the one who's passing game coordinator now, and it went right out of my head.
Either way.
Yeah, the passing game coordinator. Engstrom. Thank you, John.
There you go.
Thanks,
Hammer.
Hammer.
Engstrom is a guy that I think
Hammer in
would
the
be.
background.
Yes, thank you, Hammer. Johnny on the spot over there. I think that would be certainly the guy that appears to be next in line. He's kind of taken the same trajectory that we saw from Ben Johnson, tight end, passing game, and might be there. And I think he's going to provide a huge support system for Ben Johnson this year, as Ben Johnson has done in the past as well. So I think that's the guy who appears to be next in line, but we'll have to wait and see what happens there.
Hey, Dan, last question for you, and I'm not sure how to quantify it, but you've been voice of the Lions for a number of years. You watch NFL Network, ESPN, Fox Sports, whatever you watch. The talk of the town is the Detroit Lions, or the talk of the league. Everybody talking about how they're going to take that next step this year, potentially be the division favorites, compete for a championship. I told a story earlier. I placed a deposit for season tickets for the first time in my life yesterday. I was able to preview the seats that I'm going to get.
First time in your life that you paid for something or paid for season tickets?
Both. But I went to preview because tomorrow is the date that I could pick my seats. I previewed the seats that I have available to purchase from. All the seats on the 100 level bought up. All the seats on the 200 level bought up. There are just upstairs in the 300 sections. This town is crazy for the Detroit Lions. Is there any chance that
Don't even say it.
Well, we had Dre Bly on last week, and you're talking about you could read your own press clippings. Yeah, you got to stay hungry. How does is that Dan Campbell's biggest job, to keep these guys focused every single day, every single week, and looking what's in front of them? Because you could get intoxicated with, hey, yeah, we're the big bad Detroit Lions, couldn't you?
Well, I would defer to Braylon a little bit on that because he's lived that life. But I would say this, that Dan Campbell has done a great job of setting the tone for this football team. And what I would also say is I would hope, and this is a cliche, but it's the absolute truth, that you respect the process, because you're not getting anything. And that starts with the first OTA they have, the first off-season practice they have, the first off-season lift they have. You need to put in all the work that's going to put you in a position that next September you're ready to win. Look, this team started 1-6. I hope they remember what that felt like.
Yeah.
And I hope they remember what that felt like compared to finishing 8-2. And the things that they had to do, not turn the ball over, not commit silly turnovers, the things that it took to win. You've gotten a taste of both now. Now it's up to you to stretch that thing out over 17 games, not dig a hole for yourself and win. The biggest thing that I say to people is, man, yes, it feels great. I understand that you think they're going to win the division, and you think that they have a chance to go to the Super Bowl and they could contend in the NFC. But you have to worry about practice 1, practice 2, all the things that'll get you to that point. And I know it sounds cliche or boring or taking the small view instead of the wide world view, but you have to do it that way. Nothing slides you through to January. You got to start in September and really start next month or later this month when they get back in there. And that's what keeps coming back to me is it all feels great. But man, it's so easy for it to slip away if you don't handle your business.
Yeah, Dan, and I don't have a question, man. Just more so just piggybacking off what you said. And the good thing about that is, where does Cam Sutton come from? He comes from Pittsburgh. You know the emphasis on the defense every year. You know what Mike Tomlin expects out of them. Where does C.J. Gardner-Johnson come from? They were just in the Super Bowl. And where does where does Mosley come from? They come from 49ers, where every year the NFC Championship is the last resort. So they're coming in on the same energy as our 8-10 Detroit Lions. 8-2 Detroit Lions.
I love too, just to jump on that point. These are guys that have an attitude. These are smart leader type guys, have an edge to them, a nastiness to them. I think that was something that attracted these guys to this staff, and I think that certainly that's part of the reason they were brought in here. They preach the right way, say the right things, and I think they're gonna. And that's Bugs too. You listened before any game last year. Yeah. Bugs is one of the guys setting the tone for this football team, and that's one of the reasons that he's back here.
Dan Miller, voice of the Lions, of course, catch him. I'm sure they've got draft coverage coming up later this month. Also, Dan and Nate Robertson, Thursday.
Yes.
Tigers pregame, Tigers postgame. Tigers on Fox 2. Jennifer Hammond will be on the field. Woody Woodruff.
Ermanni will be on the field.
I'll be on there. Hey, baby.
Yeah. We'll jump in at 10 a.m., and Nate will be in town. We love having him with us, and we'll take you right up to 1 o'clock first pitch. You'll see the game on Fox 2. So we got you covered all day on opening day. Always easily one of the biggest days in the city of Detroit all year long.
Make sure you bring the gum with you, Dan.
I got much better at it last year. First year I was an embarrassment.
All right, Dan. Thanks, bud. Give our best to Hammer and Tanner and whoever else is in. Maybe Matt Trump is in there today. We don't know.
You got it. I got Holloway over here. I got Canner, and I got Hammer.
Hey there, Hollowell. All right, now we'll see you guys. Very good.